You've heard of Dracula. You've heard of haunted castles and vampire brides. But what if one of history's darkest legends was a real noblewoman? A countess so infamous, they said she bathed in virgin blood to keep her youth. Her name? Elizabeth Báthory. Her story? Even darker than the legend. A Hungarian castle. Servants vanishing. A countess standing over a drained corpse. Witnesses claiming they saw her bite flesh, stitch mouths shut, and dance in pools of blood. Her victims? Teenage girls. Her motive? Immortality, they say. This isn't fiction. This is the legend of the Blood Countess, and you're about to learn what history says really happened, and what might just be the result of a political conspiracy. Was Elizabeth Báthory the most prolific female killer of all time, or a powerful woman destroyed by scandal? Born in 1560 into one of the most powerful noble families in Hungary, Elizabeth Báthory was royalty from the start. She was related to kings, warlords, and princes. By age 11, she was betrothed to Count Ferenc Nadasdy, a warrior known as the Black Knight of Hungary. She spoke several languages. She was educated in politics, science, and religion, rare for women at the time. She managed vast estates, wrote letters of command, and governed entire villages. In an era when women were supposed to stay quiet and obedient, Elizabeth ruled. But as her power grew, so did whispers of cruelty, of rage, of unspeakable punishments inflicted behind castle walls. There are accounts of her childhood epilepsy and rumored seizures, which, at the time, were sometimes interpreted as signs of demonic possession. Some historians suggest early trauma may have played a role in her later cruelty. Elizabeth's main residence was Cactus Castle, a looming fortress on a hill in present-day Slovakia. It was said that servants feared entering the towers alone. Locals spoke of screams echoing through the stone halls. It began with the lower-class girls, peasant daughters sent to serve the noble family. Then, over the years, noble families noticed their daughters weren't coming home. Witnesses would later describe a chamber of torture. Girls whipped until flesh peeled off, starved and frozen naked in winter, burned with irons, stabbed with needles, and even sewn shut at the lips. Some stories claimed she forced victims to eat parts of their own bodies. Others spoke of bizarre experiments with blood, that she believed it could restore youth, and so she bathed in it. In one harrowing tale, Elizabeth allegedly poured honey on a servant girl and left her outside to be eaten alive by insects. In another, she supposedly bit a maid's face in a rage over a snagged hairbrush. Some reports claim she invented cruel torture devices, including a custom-made iron cage that would slowly lower onto victims, impaling them with spikes. In other stories, she sewed girls' mouths shut or forced them to sit on red-hot metal rods. There were rumors that she would burn girls' genitals or cut off fingers and eat them in front of them. She supposedly made servants stand in freezing water during harsh winters, then let them freeze to death overnight. There are also claims that she forced blood into her victims' mouths or rubbed it into her skin like a lotion. In some accounts, she would laugh during the torture, occasionally writing letters or conducting household business while a girl screamed nearby. Historians believe many of these tales were exaggerated or crafted for political gain. But the bodies were real. Servants confessed to burying corpses around the estate, in fields, under staircases, and in the castle courtyard. And the number? Possibly over 600, though only 80 were officially confirmed. Whether truth, myth, or a blend of both, Cactus Castle earned its name in folklore as a place where nobility and nightmares collided. This is the part everyone remembers. Elizabeth Báthory, naked in a stone tub, soaking in warm blood to preserve her beauty. But where did this come from? The first mention of her bathing in blood appears more than a century after her death, in a book written for shock value. Earlier records describe horrific abuse, but not bloodbaths. Modern historians believe this legend was likely added later to sensationalize the story and possibly to draw parallels with vampire folklore popular at the time. Still, it stuck because it was grotesque, unforgettable, and terrifying. Whether she did it or not, The myth transformed her from cruel countess to a mortal monster. Her legacy became twisted into a symbol of the femme fatale, beautiful, seductive, and murderous. The image stuck, reinforced in modern pop culture. In 1610, after years of rumors and complaints, King Matthias II finally took action. He authorized a formal investigation into Elizabeth Báthory's conduct. But this wasn't just a quiet inquiry, it was a full military raid. A team led by Palatine Georgi Thurzo, one of the highest-ranking nobles in Hungary, stormed Cactus Castle. What they allegedly found was horrifying: mutilated corpses, imprisoned girls, and blood on the walls. One account even claims they caught Elizabeth red-handed, standing over a dying victim. But here's the twist. Elizabeth was never given a trial. She wasn't allowed to speak in her own defense. Instead, her servants were arrested, interrogated, and tortured. Their confessions, extracted under duress, included shocking stories, but their reliability is deeply questionable. Over 300 people testified during the investigation, but many were not eyewitnesses. Their claims range from specific incidents of cruelty to vague rumors heard years earlier. Some described bodies buried around the castle. Others spoke of hearing screams in the night. The atmosphere was one of fear, gossip, and hysteria. The process bore the hallmarks of a political show trial without the trial. Elizabeth's cousin, Georgi Thurzo, had his own reasons to act decisively. As the appointed investigator, he stood to benefit from her downfall. Meanwhile, King Matthias owed the Báthory family a large sum of money, a debt that conveniently vanished when Elizabeth was declared a criminal and her estate seized. Even the legal proceedings were odd. A noblewoman of Elizabeth's status would normally be tried in a royal court, not convicted by hearsay and confined without verdict. The decision to wall her into her castle was a sentence without precedent and without legal grounding. To this day, historians debate whether this was justice or a carefully orchestrated takedown. Was Elizabeth Báthory guilty of monstrous crimes? Or was she a scapegoat, a powerful woman brought down by a mixture of debt, envy, and gender politics? The truth, as always, lies somewhere between blood and power. Elizabeth Báthory was sentenced not to death, but to be walled inside her own castle. A single room was bricked shut, leaving a small hole for food and water. She lived like that, entombed for 4 years. No visitors, no daylight, just stone, guilt, and legend. She died in 1614. When guards finally opened the cell, they found her collapsed on the floor, silent to the end. The world outside had already turned her into a monster. Whether she deserved it or not, history had spoken. Even her burial was shrouded in mystery. Originally interred in the local church, her remains were supposedly moved in secret to avoid vandalism. Why do people still talk about Elizabeth Báthory? Because she represents a perfect storm, a woman with power defying societal norms, surrounded by mystery and horror. Was she a sadist who tortured for pleasure? Or was she a brilliant, noble woman destroyed by political enemies? Even today, she appears in horror films, novels, metal songs, and vampire lore. She's inspired characters from Carmilla to Lady Dimitrescu. In some parts of Hungary, people say she still walks the ruins of Cactus Castle, searching for lost youth, bathing in moonlight instead of blood. The ruins of her castle have become a macabre tourist attraction. Some claim to hear whispers or footsteps echoing in the crumbled halls. Let's be clear, Elizabeth Báthory almost certainly did abuse and kill young girls. The number is debated. Some say a few dozen, others hundreds. But the myth around her has twisted fact into folklore. She didn't drink blood. There's no proof she bathed in it. But she did command servants, ruled lands, and may have believed in dark rituals. Some historians point to a mix of sadism, madness, and superstition. In an era of intense superstition, belief in blood magic and rituals to restore youth wasn't outlandish, and Elizabeth may have played into those beliefs herself. Accounts from peasants and clergy suggest that rumors of Elizabeth's cruelty had been circulating for years before any investigation began. These weren't whispers in the dark, they were public secrets. Yet no one dared act because of her noble status. This raises a chilling possibility. The crimes may have been tolerated, even enabled, by the very system that eventually condemned her. It's also worth noting that noble women were rarely tried for crimes of this magnitude. For Elizabeth to be targeted so aggressively suggests either immense guilt or immense political usefulness in taking her down. Her cousin was the Prince of Transylvania. She had strong connections to powerful factions. Taking her down may have been more than justice. It may have been calculated power play. To this day, her guilt is debated. Some scholars claim the servant testimonies were inconsistent, riddled with contradictions and coercion. Others note the complete absence of contemporary records detailing the alleged 600 victims. In truth, Elizabeth Báthory is a historical mirror, reflecting both the darkness of unchecked power and the perils of demonizing powerful women. We love to be terrified, and nothing terrifies quite like nobility turned evil. Elizabeth Báthory's story gives us a villainess straight out of nightmares. Regal, ruthless, and bathed in crimson. But her story also reflects real fears of unchecked power, of women who break rules, and of what happens when society chooses myth over justice. Maybe she was a monster. Maybe she was made into one. But one thing's certain, Elizabeth Báthory is no fairy tale. If you enjoyed this story, feel free to check many more tales from the past here.